Starting live. Hello, folks.
Hello and welcome.
And we're live over here. Hello and welcome back to another episode of Comic Shop Talk Live, brought to you by Black Cat Comics in Rock and Milpitas, your one-stop shop for all things superhero. Shop online at black-cat-comics.com. Pretty good, huh?
That's really good.
I have a great
radio
face
voice
for radio. So, welcome. And I'm Mark Causey.
I'm Francie.
And we are here keeping you connected to the comic book community, keeping you entertained during the shelter in place, and bringing you all the great comic book news and everything going on in comic shops. This is an interactive show, so feel free to throw your questions out there, questions, comments, concerns, queries, and we'll do our best to satisfy those curiosities. Today we're going to talk about, we've been talking about influential comics, comics that got us into this, comics that keep us here. Talked a little bit of it last week, had so much fun doing that. We figured we'd bust out a few more. And of course we bring you Comic Shop News. Comic Shop News. So new comics are back. New comics are back. New comics are back. And everybody's excited about that. Everybody's been waiting a long time. How you doing, CJ? Everybody's been waiting for their favorite issues this week. Everything got started again, so that's big news. That's big fun. Slowly, in a little way, like I've been saying, kind of sticking your toe in the water instead of jumping into the deep end. But I know us retailers needed that, and maybe the fan base needed to do that a little bit
us
too.
Us fans need it too.
Yes.
I was jonesing the last couple months.
Like I say, I almost don't know where to get started. We're going to talk about some of the new comics, some of the things that did roll out this week. And shall we just get started with that?
Yes.
Why don't you get started? I talk too much on this show. Why don't you lead us off with something cool?
That's a little true. So let's see. I got all my favorite Hill House books that came out this week. We got the last chapter of Dollhouse Family. I haven't read it yet because I want to reread all 1 through 6 together again because it's going to be really fun. Plunge. Oh, it's so creepy. It's like, Coraline with the button eyes. There's something going on with the weird eyes in this one. It's super creepy. And then Daphne Byrne by my all-time favorite, Kelly Jones as the artist. Super creepy, super weird. Kelly Jones, Swamp Thing fame. Total Victorian spiritualism. Weird, creepy stuff's happening. Love, love, love. But I have to say, my favorite, and you're going to see a theme here, my favorite was probably the Deceased Unkillables. The end of the 3-parter. Oh, it's so good. It's heartbreaking. It's scary. It's a zombie comic, but don't let that dissuade you. It's still very, very good, and the art's amazing.
That was the cool Deathstroke cardstock cover. That's
I had to pull that for myself.
Cool A cover, because everybody loves zombie Wonder Woman.
When I look at this, I'm like, isn't there enough trauma and horror in the world? Why do you have to read horror and zombie books? And then to round it out, Storyteller Ghosts, which is part of the old Jim Henson Storyteller. If you guys are old enough to remember that, probably not.
If you don't know what that is,
it's super good.
It's on Netflix. Check it out because it's awesome.
Good. I think it's on Amazon Prime too.
Okay.
But these are really good. So they're usually like 4-issue minis, and they have a theme like giants, mermaids, ghosts. But each issue is a one-shot, so you can pick up any one at random, and you won't miss a thing. They're really well done. They've got different guest artists and writers for each issue, and it's a ton of fun.
Says Jim Henson right there.
Come on.
Huge week for the Joe Hill books, which I think is really cool.
Huge week for horror fans.
It was kind of a DC week all the way around, to be honest, but it was great to see the Joe Hill coming out so strong. That's probably the hottest thing. Is that true? It seems like the hottest thing in comics right now. I can't really think of a title that I don't know is exploding in my little corner of the world. And we had a whole bunch of people add all Joe Hill books on their subs over just the last couple in getting preparation for the return of comics. And like I say, I don't know that there's that much buzz around anything else right now. Not to diss on anything else, it's just to comment on how hot all those Joe Hill books are.
Well, and I wonder if it's a commentary on our state of the world. Like, we are surrounded by terror and fear and horrible stuff. So maybe we just need to read more. Maybe we have a tendency to dive deep and to surround ourselves morning, noon, and night with terror.
It is, I would guess, I'm a sci-fi person, not a horror person, but it would be my assumption that it is, I don't know, somehow easier on you to read someone else's horror than to have to deal with your own. That's what I always thought was the appeal in horror comics. It's nice to watch someone else be murdered rather than you, right?
Yeah. Maybe it's a way of like displacing your own current fears into something else. Maybe it's like an outlet for it.
That's a smarter way of putting it.
We'll take that. Yeah, CJ, we've got a couple of spots left for later today if you want to go to our online website. We should actually talk about that.
Yes, really quick.
Total sideways.
Parentheses, more of a parentheses, since CJ brought up the question. Curbside pickup, yes, curbside pickup is available. And it is totally legal and legit, so that's cool. We can't be letting people into the store yet, so curbside pickup is the next best thing to shipment. You can go to the website. We have a big thing that says curbside, really big. Right there on the homepage. So click on curbside and book yourself a time and come get your stuff. If you are a subscriber, your stuff is already ready. We see your name come up on the slot. We get your bag out there. If you, a subscriber, have placed an additional order, we combine those orders, get them out there for you.
Yes.
If you are a non-subscriber, then you place your order online, and same thing applies. You book your thing, and we've got it out there for you. So go to the website, go to the homepage, click on curbside pickup, get those things picked up. You have a 2-hour window, so you have till 3 o'clock to book one for today. Delivery appointments are from Wednesday to Saturday, 12 to 5. Thank you, Michael. Appreciate that.
Yeah. And we're trying to do everything online because we're not here all the time to answer the phones. We're not checking email 24/7. So the online way gives you an opportunity to basically create your time without having to go through one of us. So it saves you a little bit of time.
We feel like at the moment, and of course things are totally fluid and changing and blah, blah, blah all the time. We feel like we have a fairly secure system. We feel like we've covered the bases.
Yeah.
So you should be able to go to the website, buy the new books, buy old books, buy trades, whatever that we have. You should see all the new this week stuff up there. Again, curbside pickup times and getting stuff shipped out to you. We think we have every way for you to order your books and get your books. If there's anything that we've missed or anything else that we can do to provide that for you, get your comics to you, we are more than happy to do that.
The only thing that's tricky that we haven't figured out is how we can put long and short boxes on the online store without shipping them, because there's no way we can ship those, but we can make them available for curbside pickup. So for now, if you need long or short boxes, just give us a jingle.
There you go.
We can have them ready for you.
Think that about covers it for the technicalities.
I think so.
All right. And of course, if you're anywhere in the good old US of A, go to black-cat-comics.com, order your new this week books, order previous issues, order old school books like the ones behind me, order trade paperbacks, order whatever it is that you see there. We ship to anywhere in the good old US of A.
That's right.
Now I think that covers all the technicalities.
I think so.
And now back to new comics. And speaking of my man CJ, like I said, it was a very DC week. Got the horror books. We talked a little bit about DC. It gave me an opportunity to talk about a few different things that I always like talking about, like books. Justice League, like Team Books. League and Odyssey both came out this week, and that's always fun. I'm really big on Team Books. I'm really big on the big guns, the stars, Superman, Batman, Wonder Woman, Flash, Green Lantern, Martian Manhunter, etc., etc. Speaking of influential comics, when I was a little kid, it always seemed to me that Team Books were the way to go because you get more bang for your buck.
Yeah.
I wanted, instead of one superhero, I wanted 28 superheroes in my book. And when you bought a book like Justice League or the Avengers, you got a ton of heroes, you got the best villains, you got the biggest and the best. Yeah. And I don't know. So,
and then if you fall in love with Batman or you fall in love with Wonder Woman, then you can pick up their individual issues.
Exactly. I really loved Superman, so I went around and read Justice League, and I read all the super titles, etc. So everybody everywhere should be reading Justice League because it's awesome. It's always been awesome.
I'm a fan of Justice League Dark.
What's that?
I like Justice League Dark.
I'm a big fan of Justice League Dark. I should have Odyssey here, but I don't because I'm a fan of Odyssey too. Another one was Batman Giant. Been talking up these 100-page
I love
giants.
those. They're so
This
much
is your
fun.
latest issue of Batman Giant. Batman Giant. I'll say it again. 100-page giant. They're so much fun, and
they're really cheap for 100. It's only $4.99 for 100 pages. That's pretty good.
Super true, and you get new stories, you get classic reprints. You don't have to know anything about any of these characters to get into it. A brand new reader, a 5-year-old, can pick up this book and love it.
Well,
it's probably not appropriate for a 5-year-old. A 10-year-old who's never read comics can pick this up and fall in love with Batman. Get introduced to the other characters. And if you're old school like me, you love it too, because the new stories are self-contained and the old stories are super awesome classic reprints that you either know and love or you need to fall in love with because you missed them the first time.
Yes.
So 100-page giants, and they do Superman, Batman, Wonder Woman, Aquaman, Flash, specials and all kinds of things. The Ghosts one that they did around Halloween
so good.
was like immediately one of my favorite comics of all time.
What's the one that's coming out this upcoming
the
week?
War one, Our Fighting Forces. Our Fighting Forces 100-page giant. Just in time for Memorial Day. Make sure you pick up Our Fighting Forces 100-page giant, because I'll speak for myself, but I think I speak for a lot of you too. I don't know enough about war comics. The subject is perhaps a little taboo, but frankly, that's why they started making war comics in the first place. And to show you all the aspects. It wasn't about glorifying war. It was about showing you all the terrible things that happened to Sergeant Rock and these guys and all the things. So war comics, like every genre, have some of the best writers and best artists in the history of comics. Joe Kubert tops that list. Lee and Kirby are on that list. Steranko, all kinds of people are on that list. And so war comics are awesome and a really great piece of comics history. And it's a really interesting genre. I'm a big fan of Haunted Tank because I like genre fusion. And so I didn't want a straight up war comic. I wanted one about a haunted tank.
Did you ever share the story about asking Tom King about Unknown Soldier?
No.
Well, not since I brought it up, now you have to.
Okay, so speaking of war comics, and good call. I say I don't know much about war comics, but I'm a big fan of Unknown Soldier. I pick up a whole lot of Unknown Soldiers back in the day, and it's a really great character, really unique kind of thing. I always like the characters where the other of the big two doesn't have one. Marvel doesn't have an Unknown Soldier, and so that makes him even more interesting. So we were at C2E2. And this year, sort of the last convention of the year, I would guess. And we saw Tom King and Mitch Gerads. I always want to say Gerard, but I think it's Gerads. Anyway, we saw those guys at the show, and it popped into my head, these guys should do Unknown Soldier. Totally. They should bring back Unknown Soldier. Tom King has the military chutzpah, and he has a great knack for sort of revitalizing, I don't want to say reinventing, revitalizing characters like Mr. Miracle and Adam Strange. And so I thought it would be really great to get a new exciting version of Unknown Soldier. I even gave him a premise. I was like, what does Unknown Soldier do when he's discharged? The guy's been at war since Korea. He's probably getting a little old. And anyway, he flat out totally dissed me. Just
he was rudely shot you down.
Just shot me down like a World War I bomber. So I love him anyway. This isn't one of those stories where I'll never read another Tom King book because he dissed me at a show. But yes, I thought I pitched him a great idea and he totally shot me down. And if I see him put out an Unknown Soldier book, I'm going to ask him for $1.
That's right.
So anyway, that's my Unknown Soldier story. Unknown Soldier is another great war comic, another great sort of fusion of action adventure, superhero, and war comics. So yeah, be on the lookout for that next week. Our Fighting Forces 100-page giant. Yes, Dark Comics. Those 100-page giants are awesome. What I don't remember what he specifically said. Oh, I do actually. The first thing he said to me was that Garth Ennis had already done that.
Grant Morrison.
No, Garth Ennis. He said Garth Ennis had already done that. 99.9% sure it's Garth Ennis.
One of the G's. One of the G's who's British.
But that was like 20 years ago and totally
It's Grant
irrelevant.
Morrison.
But it's Garth Ennis.
Somebody look it up. Grant Morrison.
It's Garth Ennis. So yes, check out the Our Fighting Forces 100-pager next week. Check out some back issues of Unknown Soldier if you get the chance. Check out some Haunted Tank. They did one of the, I think it was Haunted Tank. They did a New 52 war comic that didn't last very long, but I appreciated that they did that genre in New 52. Sticking to the New This Week books while Francie handles the phone call, wanted to make a quick mention of these guys. This is Gotham High and Lost Carnival. These are the two newest DC young adult graphic novel offerings. These have been just scorchingly popular, particularly, frankly, with the non-comic people. So I'm a huge fan of them because I'm a huge fan of anything that brings new readers into comics, younger readers into comics. But you don't have to be a young adult reader to enjoy this stuff. You can be old like me and still get into this. They're self-contained. They're their own little universe. There's no continuity involved or whatever. So you can just read them and take them for what they are. This one is all your favorite Bat characters in high school. Seeing Bruce and Selina, and don't want to reveal the Joker name in high school was a lot of fun. And are they graphic novels or regular fiction? They are graphic novels. They are young adult graphic novels, pictures and awesome art and everything. Voila. And they're a lot of fun. Like I say, this is the Bat Gang in high school, sort of Batman and the Archies.
I love this cover.
Is Lost Carnival. It's as they say, a Dick Grayson graphic novel. Everybody loves Dick Grayson. Dick Grayson. Dan Didio. Except Dan Didio. Most fans really love Dick Grayson. I always say he's the Batman people like. And in the universe, you know, because he's a nice guy and Bruce isn't. Anyway, if you love Dick Grayson like I do, if you love graphic novels, if you love self-contained stories, all those kind of things, pick these up. They do a whole bunch of them. There's a Raven one, a Mira one, all kinds of different things. Cool art, great stories, and like I say, they've been crazy popular and get more so all the time. So I wanted to throw it out there that these are the new ones. I know us regular floppy comic people don't necessarily go for stuff like this, but either because of, I don't know, price point or whatever it might be, but these are an exception to all that because it's fun stuff.
They're great if you've got a 11 to 14-year-old at home, especially young women. They're gobbling these books up. So if you've got anyone at home that needs to read some books,
if you want to introduce somebody to comics, the comic
ones.
format, all
My
that kind of
nieces love
thing,
them.
in a way that's not, you know, all ages and all that kind of thing. Because I love the all ages books and they do a great job with the all ages books, but sometimes they're a little too young for that reader group. I know when I was a kid, I felt a little insulted sometimes with all ages books. And you don't want to make that the introduction to somebody's comic experience. Again, this is an interactive program. Questions, comments, all those good things. Want to hear what you might have picked up this week or what you're looking forward to picking up this week. If it's not out this week, we're looking forward to hearing about what's the issue that you're waiting for. What's the title you've been waiting for? You've been waiting weeks and weeks and weeks for the latest issue of your favorite title. What's your favorite title?
If you've gotten your books yet already, what's the first book in your pile that you read this week? Or what's the one you can't wait to read once you get it?
Which also disappoints me. I didn't put it in that stack because mine this week is Jimmy Olsen, Superman's pal.
That's
Jimmy
really
Olsen.
Good.
It is just such a hoot.
Matt Fraction.
It just gets better and better and more clever and more interesting and more, I've used the word sentimental. I don't know if that's quite the right word, but they just make you love Jimmy in that book.
He's a hipster.
He is, and I've always been a fan of Jimmy Olsen. And Wonder Woman Dead Earth 3 probably isn't too far away. Arnell, the regular shipping schedule really kicks back in next week. So whatever issue you guys might be waiting on, it's probably 2 to 5 weeks away.
So they're redoing the previews. So Diamond sends out a catalog every month of what's coming the next 3 months. So they're kind of redoing the last one and they're combining May and June. Is that right? So we'll get a new previews magazine next week. And so the dates will start to become a lot more solid as soon as we get our hands on that.
Yes, at the moment, and I don't mean to be dissing on anybody, everybody in the industry is working very hard to get back on track. But at the moment, I wouldn't trust too many shipping dates that you see online.
Yeah, just kidding.
A lot of the pages are going to still be from whenever the original page was made.
A little fluid.
But over the next couple of weeks, things should be making a whole lot of sense. And yes, Michael, I knew you'd be my man on Jimmy Olsen. It is part of the nostalgia. One of the greatest things, one of my favorite things in comics, and Tom King did this so brilliantly in Mr. Miracle. I love an almost invisible homage. I love when you're reading a book and a new person or a person that's not 100 years old reads the book, doesn't miss a beat, loves that book. Everybody read Mr. Miracle. Everybody loved Mr. Miracle. Nobody missed anything in Mr. Miracle unless you had read the original Kirby run. If you read the original Kirby run of Mr. Miracle, you saw these very, very subtle sort of overlays. There were titles, there were names, there were different things.
He used the same titles.
He did a lot of little that didn't affect the story, but if you were aware of those things, it was wonderful because you get the vibe that the guy read the book, that the guy knows what he's doing because he read the original source material. And Jimmy Olsen is a little bit like that. In a lot of ways, it is very influenced by the original Kirby run. Most people don't know, and I don't know, I almost shouldn't say this because I don't know all my facts on this. But it's one of the first creator-owned titles. Kirby was given Jimmy Olsen and was sort of given carte blanche to do whatever he wants. That's why the New Gods come from first appear in Jimmy Olsen and different things. So it's a hugely, hugely instrumental book, and most people don't even know about it. But Matt Fraction obviously does because it has that same kind of feel, that same kind of flavor, and that makes it, for us old guys, it makes it a lot of fun to read. And again, you new folks, don't miss anything. You Matt Fraction fans, don't miss anything. But hopefully it would inspire you to maybe go back and check out the Turtle Boy issue of the original Jimmy Olsen, or one of the other wacky Jimmy gets turned into something issues of Jimmy Olsen, because that's always fun. Yeah, there you go. Dark Comics tried your storyteller this week. Very good comic, he says. And as I said earlier, you knew that when it said Jim Henson on it. The man's been gone a long time, but his name isn't on anything that isn't top quality.
Good times.
Good stuff. So yes, Michael, I'm right there with you with the Jimmy Olsen. And again, I feel bad I don't have a cover to show you, but
18 lashings for you.
Well, like I say, it's a big DC week. You can go to DCComics.com, check out all the different things. Us Marvel fans, yeah, there you go. Us Marvel fans, we'll get back in action next week. Turtle Boy. Michael says, Kirby's run on Jimmy Olsen, what got him hooked on Kirby? There you go.
Oh, nice.
Mine was
talk about influential comics.
Yep.
Comics
speaking of
that
influential,
changed me.
There you go. Hashtag comics that changed me.
Right.
As I said last time, my introduction to Kirby was Cap 202, his return to Captain America in the 70s. And I mean, what can you say about Kirby that hasn't been said 1,000 times and well deserved?
Hello, this old helmet.
Hello.
Hello.
Thanks for joining us. Good times. So again, anything that you picked up this week, anything you're looking forward to picking up this week, or whatever is the next issue of your favorite title that you're waiting for, throw it out there. Let's talk about your favorite title.
Do we know why Marvel didn't have anything this week? Were they just not ready? What happened there? Do you know?
I don't know. Like a lot of things in comics, there's a lot of speculation to that. Realistically, how shall I say, in my own little thing, knowing nothing about nothing, my presumption is they were prepared for a longer hiatus. I think Marvel went into hibernation mode.
They just shut everything down.
I think they shut everything down.
Like all the printed comics hanging. Well,
theoretically, yes, but like I say, I think Marvel went hard stop. They told all the artists to put their pencils down, the whole bit. And then I think the return sort of snapped back a little faster than they anticipated. Totally my theory. I don't know.
Welcome. Someone's never read a comic before. Who's watching us right now?
There you go, This Old Helmet.
One of us. One of us.
You came to the right place. If you've never read a comic book in your life, but you have any interest at all in reading comics, you're watching the right show.
Yep.
Because we like to make our thing about the old schoolers like me who have read a million comics. But I really, really like to make this show also about folks like you who have never read a comic or looked at a comic in your life.
If you go to our website, black-cat-comics.com, right there on the front page, it's got new to comics, and it's a video of us talking about getting started in comics and what you need to know as you start reading for the first time.
Yep, and I strongly encourage you to jump in. Whatever movie you like, whatever TV show you like, whatever cartoon you like, whatever fictional thing you like, there's a comic book for that, and it's a great place to start. And also you can watch these videos and do all kinds of things. We have tons and tons and tons of recommendations for you.
Tons.
What's DC artist?
Yeah, Marvel shut down. So you've got a couple more?
Yes.
You want to go through?
Because though Marvel didn't ship something, in a way they actually did. These are the two all ages offerings.
IDW.
From the IDW Marvel, I don't want to say marriage, but it's a, what do you call those?
Licensing agreements.
There you go. And there are also books I talk about all the time. I love what they've been doing with this Marvel action stuff. I love what they've been doing with Star Wars Adventures. This is the Clone Wars one. Final season of Clone Wars is aired, and everybody's watched it, and everybody's crazy about it, all that kind of stuff. So I can't recommend the IDW Marvel mashup enough. You know I love the Avengers. I love all ages titles because they're self-contained, they're interesting and fun, they're a fast read.
They keep kids reading. Too.
They keep kids reading. They keep kids into comics. Kids love this stuff. They do Avengers. They do Black Panther, Captain Marvel, Spider-Man. Fun. And there's Clone Wars. There's also the main series, just Marvel Star Wars Adventures is just the regular title. They also have other minis about Darth Vader and things. Like I say, can't say enough about it. If you're a new guy like This Old Helmet, try an all ages book.
Or gal.
It's a great introduction to comics because they're simple to read and you don't have to know the continuity or be bogged down by a lot of things.
And Michael's got a great recommendation for all new readers is to check out Naomi. So the comic name Naomi is a good one to pick up.
Yep.
Good recommendation, Michael.
And super fast, and Naomi is a great example of that. Whatever it is that you pick up, your first comic, whatever is the first comic that you really love, if you read the first one and it doesn't necessarily change your life, but you're willing to try another one and you try another one and that one does change your life, buy whatever that writer writes. Buy whatever it was about that comic that changed your life. Go buy whatever it is those creators did. And Naomi's a great example. If you like Naomi, you'll see that Brian Bendis wrote that, and you can go buy his Daredevil, and now you're a comic book person.
One of us.
One of us. So that's there are always other books to talk about. Again, you can watch the video from Wednesday and you'll see me go through the routine of all the new books. On the Saturday show, we like to cover just a few things, go a little deeper on them, rather than go through every book that's out. But watch the Wednesday video, you'll see what's out, or go to the website, read the newsletter, check the shipping list, all that kind of stuff. And you'll see what's out this week, and you'll see what's coming at you next week, like the Our Fighting Forces story. So now we'll get into round 2 of influential comics. But feel free, continue to throw the new books up there. Like I say, if you're waiting on a new title, or if you got a new book this week that you want us to talk about, throw it out there. Or like I say, whatever is the next issue of your favorite title, let us know, and we can talk about that.
Well, and again, remember, these Saturday videos are all about shop talk. So we miss seeing you guys. Maybe you miss us a little bit, hopefully. So if there's things you want to ask us, or just kind of pretend like you're in the store with us, shoot us your questions, shoot us your comments.
Super good point. As I say at the top of the show, we're here to keep you connected to the comic book community. So here's Michael throwing a recommendation to the new guy.
I love it. Or gal.
You're right. This Old Helmet could be either or. I can't quite see the picture because I'm an old man. But helmets are non-gendered. So again, here's my man Michael throwing out a recommendation. it's like we're all in the shop together.
And that happens all the time.
Sure.
I love that.
Sure. That's a big part of why we got into this. And during the shutdown and during all the shelter in place and all that, we're all a little pent up. We're all a little caged up. And so again, that's half the reason we started doing this Saturday show was so we could all just converse about the books we love.
Check in.
I have no problem talking for 60 minutes. I have no problem discussing each and every book behind me, each and every book I've ever read or ever seen. But really, this is about all you guys. So I'm going to move on to some influential things, but again, keep throwing them at me. Last week, I talked a lot about some of my first comics. And those are influential, of course, because that's what gets you into this. The Kirby art in Captain America 202. I couldn't even read the book, but the pictures were so awesome that I totally understood the story. Anyway, I talked a lot about my early books. This week, for round 2, I thought I would talk about a few of the, not even more modern books, to be honest, because I'm old. I've been around here a long time. So I talked about some of my first books. Now I'm going to talk about the middle era. And then maybe if we do this again, I can talk about some more modern books, like X-Men 274, the one that got me back into all this, or like Batman 608, the book that means everything to everybody. But this is a little more, 80s and some other things. So, okay, blah, blah, blah. And I want to get a few more DC books because, I know CJ is watching, and yes, I have read a DC book or two. Yes, DC has influenced me once or twice. There are things not written by Stan Lee. There are things not drawn by John Byrne that I actually enjoy quite a bit. For example, this, and I admit, I didn't bring my actual issues because I was already at work this morning when we picked this topic. So I just printed out a few things. So I apologize for not having my original beat to stuff issues. But this is the cover of Batman 301. Batman 301 cover is drawn by Jim Aparo. Why is this comic influential to Kazi? Number one, this was my first Batman comic. Because like all great comics for years and years and years, you bought the cover. And here was Batman with a gun and somebody calling him a murderer. And so I saw that book on the spin rack and I had to have this book. And this was my first Batman comic, might be my first DC comic. Like a lot of my early comics, again, cover drawn by Jim Aparo. And I just immediately fell in love with Jim Aparo. Jim Aparo is all-time great, all-time great. I feel he's hugely underappreciated and under-recognized, so I never miss an opportunity to bring up Jim Aparo. Batman 301, great comic, all-time great. And like I say, Batman with a smoking gun. How cool is that? My first Batman comic, my first DC comic. Just love that book. And side story, like a lot of your early comics, this one disappeared somewhere along the path, and we were in England of all places and stumbled upon a comic convention in England, and Francie pulled this out of a bin, and she's like, "This one's cool." And I was like, "Oh my God, that's Batman 301! I need that one." It's a fun side story. Staying on the DC thing and slightly staying in the Batman thing, this is Teen Titans #1. Well, this is, again, a printout of the cover of Teen Titans #1 from 1980. This is a hugely influential comic for me, a hugely influential comic for a lot of people of my generation for a number of reasons. And honestly, this story may seem a little insulting to some folks on some level, but keep in mind, I was 10 years old when this book came out, so cut me a little bit of slack. Number one, you can see that this was drawn by the all-time legendary George Perez. George Perez is one of the greatest artists of all time. The reason I bought this book was because I recognized the art from the guy who was drawing Avengers at the time. This guy, George Perez, was doing Avengers as I was getting into comics, and I saw this art style on this cover, knew that it was George Perez, and so I had to have that book. Even though I wasn't terrible, I didn't even know who 90% of these characters were, partly because this is their first appearance. But I bought it for the art. That was it. And that's a great reason to buy comics. Secondly, upon reading this comic, it showed me that Robin was actually cool. If you grew up, and I like to say, I don't mean that to be like it sounds. Everybody, as they said, loves Dick Grayson. I could go on and on about how important Robin is. But in 1980, to a 10-year-old, the only thing you knew about Robin was holy this and holy that, and I don't know. It's just like you didn't understand why Batman had this kid running around in his underwear. You didn't understand why he wasn't dead by now. You didn't like the jokes. You just thought Robin was stupid. It's how it was. But then you bought Teen Titans #1, and you saw the Bat Shield,
cool.
and you saw the dude leading a team, and you saw the dude working the villains, and you were like, wow, this is a guy that was raised by Batman. This is a guy who has spent his life fighting crime, and now he's a superhero. Plus, George didn't draw him as a kid. He drew him as an older teenager. And like I say, it was the first time that you really felt like Robin was someone who had been raised by Batman, trained by Batman, somebody who was going to grow up to be Batman. And so that was life-changing for me. It's like I say, all you ever knew about Robin was from the TV show, and
Super Friends.
And Super Friends, but the portrayal in Super Friends wasn't much better.
Same.
Except that he was voiced by Casey Kasem, and Casey's awesome.
Is that true? Really?
You bet.
Oh.
And what's awesome is if you watch Scooby-Doo Meets Batman and Robin episode, Casey Kasem's doing most of the voices. There's scene, like I say, when Shaggy talks to Robin, that's all Casey, baby. Anyway, to move on, this is also, of course, the first appearance and introduction of Cyborg, Raven, and Starfire, who are excellent characters because they were created by Marv Wolfman. This book was written by Marv Wolfman and drawn by George Perez. If that doesn't influence a kid reading comics, nothing's going to. I could go on and on and on and on all day about this book, but realistically, this was what introduced me to DC Comics. I'd read Superman, I'd read some Justice League, I'd read whatever. This was the first DC comic I followed and I read. Great stories, great art, great characters. Everything is in the new Teen Titans run.
We're old. We have to look really close to the screen to read it.
Oh, I don't know the issue number that he's talking about, but Michael's mentioning one of his influential comics was an old issue of JLA from the 60s, where the villain had, designed traps for each particular hero. And I remember the cover to that book. I don't remember the issue. Maybe if Marcus is watching, he can let us know the issue number because he knows everything.
He knows all things.
All right. So staying in DC and staying in influential, though the picture's a little small, so I'll hold it up. This guy is Man of Steel #1 from 1986 by John Byrne. And John Byrne, love this book. This is the first post-crisis Superman book. This is the first post-crisis DC book, the reimagining of the Superman origin. I was already a huge John Byrne fan. I'm using this not specifically as this issue, but I love to show a John Byrne book, but just to sort of overall reference post-crisis DC. Crisis on Infinite Earths is hugely influential to everyone who's ever read comics. Again, particularly at my age, I was like 15, 16 when Crisis came out. Part of why folks didn't get into DC was because of Earth 1 and Earth 2 and Earth Z, and you didn't know who the hell anybody was half the time. And so Crisis cleaned all that up. And again, art by George Perez meant us Marvel guys wanted to read that book. And after Crisis, DC absconded with all of the great Marvel artists, John Byrne, Frank Miller, everybody. And so us Marvel guys jumped ship to check out some of these first issues. And so I showed this one. I would also reference Flash #1, the Perez Wonder Woman #1, on and on I could go. All of the post-crisis DC stuff was brilliant, was a lot of fun, was some of the best creators in comics. And again, a little like Teen Titans, made me a DC fan. I'm always drawn back to Marvel. But in post-crisis, it gave me an opportunity to get in on the DCU from the ground floor without having to know all of the stuff of all the different Earths and blah, blah, blah. And so I did, and I really enjoyed it. And this is a book you can find for like $1. You can find all 6 of them for like $5, and you should, because it's great. He does the first meeting of Superman and Batman in that run, and it's one of my favorite comics of all time. Good stuff.
Shout out, just a shout out.
Marvelous. I was finishing Michael's thing too. Yes, Man of Steel.
Yes.
Do you have something to throw out there?
Well, I don't have visual aids, but I can still chat about some of the books that are still really impactful for me. The one, and I'm trying to remember the exact name. Was it Legend of Wonder Woman, that 6-issue miniseries?
Why don't you talk? I'll go look.
Okay, I don't think we have it.
Okay,
sure. So, The Legend of Wonder Woman, I think that was the right title. It blew me away because it was so simple in the story of Diana becoming Wonder Woman. And without spoiling it, her origin of being, made from clay and a daughter of Zeus, they put such a twist on it that it made perfect sense, totally resonated, kind of undid the whole entire history of what we think about when we think about Wonder Woman. And it was just very apropos for the time. So it was written and drawn by the same woman, and I can't remember her name. Shame on me, Francie. But I love that book. And if you can find it, you should pick it up and read it. It's really, really well done.
Awesome.
Yeah, we got to get that back in stock.
Let me ask you, speaking of influential things.
Yes?
What made you read Sandman?
Well, when I started reading Preacher, and we talked about this last week, it was that cover of issue 5 that hooked me as a horror fan. Once I started reading that was under the DC Vertigo label, which is the sub-label for DC. It's now gone, which is really heartbreaking. So I started picking up anything that was DC Vertigo. And so Sandman was the other one that had been running as just as long, if not longer, than Preacher. And so it was probably, my guess is it was probably a Dave McKean cover that caught my eye. And so I started reading it, and I just couldn't put it down. I was reading The Invisibles at the time, Grant Morrison book, which was also amazing and really the true origin of the Matrix. I'll just say that. And what were some of the other ones? And they had a lot of like introductory 4-issue, 6-issue minis that were range from horror, sci-fi, fantasy, just non-superhero stuff, which, I love the superheroes, but I'm more of a kind of genre gal. So it was the only, non-superhero label where I could read something, and 9 out of 10 times I'm completely, if not more, satisfied.
And you caught it exactly at the right time too, because Vertigo,
early 90s,
a big part of what makes it a shame that it doesn't exist anymore,
it's
because you couldn't pick up a Vertigo book that wasn't awesome. There was 20 or 30 years where if a first issue, kind of like Image is now, and how Image has been for the last 20 years, 10 years at least. If you saw a Vertigo book with a first issue, you bought the book. And you were glad you did, because then it took you on a ride like Fables or Why the Last Man, or on and on and on and on we could go. So yeah, that's good stuff.
Michael's got another one.
Is coming on Man of Steel. I've been reading comics for 25 years, and this was such an innovation. Super true. Super true. And it's a little bit of what I love to talk about in regards to the show. Michael, God bless you. You've got a couple of years on me. You were a little older than I was at the time. I was a newish reader. And so it was kind of my, not introduction to Superman, but reintroduction to Superman. But as a longtime reader, for you to still appreciate the total upheaval of the whole thing, they were basically eliminating your whole universe and everything you had ever known about Superman and starting all over again. And it was very different. There had never been Superboy. Ma and Pa Kent were alive. All kinds of stuff were really different. And so, like I say, kudos to you for appreciating the innovation rather than doing what comic people like to do, which is say, I don't like new.
Change.
Which brings me to something else. This sort of DC, but that back then it was called Carlton Comics. This is Blue Beetle #1 with a backstory of the Question.
I love the question.
I love the question, and I love me Ted Cord Blue Beetle.
Tom King should write the question.
Ooh, that would be good too. So what makes this book influential?
Yes.
This is another one the kind of theories that I talk about all the time, that you should always be willing to try something new. You should always be willing, if it seems at all interesting to you, pick it up and read it, because it might change your life like this book did. Back when I was a kid, comics came in little bagged 3-packs, and part of the fun was you never knew what the middle one was, so you'd always be trying to figure out what the one in the middle was, and you couldn't do it. But anyway, they had Marvel and DC packs, and I'm going to kind of fudge the details. I'm sure it was cheaper than this, but as I recall, the Marvel DC packs were like 99 cents, and the generic packs, or the other guys, were like 79 cents. And God bless him, my dad cared about that 20 cents. And so I would, come at him with the Marvel 3-pack that had Spider-Man and Fantastic Four and a mystery comic in the middle. And he'd look at the rack and he'd see that there was one that was 20 cents cheaper, and he'd grab it and say, "You're getting this one." Fine, because something's better than nothing, right? So I open the bag and here's Blue Beetle. Blue Beetle? I don't know who Blue Beetle is. Charlton? I don't know what Charlton is.
It's not Batman.
Then I opened the book and I read it, and it was awesome. And the only thing more awesome than the front story was that the 3-packs of the 70s. The only more awesome than the front story was the backup story with the question. And I was totally blown away by this comic, totally blown away by these heroes. Blue Beetle was so cool, and he flies around in this big giant beetle. That was so cool. This book changed my life and changed the way I looked at comics. The question was so cool.
Is that his first appearance?
I believe so. And so mysterious and so cool, and you didn't know what his deal was, and just awesome. And so this was my first experience with yesterday. I didn't know anything about this, and today I want to know everything about this. And that's how great comics work. That's why I'm always encouraging the old schoolers like me to try something new, always encouraging the new folks to branch out, whatever.
Grab bags are fun for that.
Why grab bags are fun. I'm all about the new reader. I'm all about becoming a new reader. I'm all about finding a new favorite, whatever it is, because we all get in our ruts. And I love my rut. I love reading everything Captain America. But if I did that, then I would have never scored this. Oh, and by the way, written and drawn by Steve Ditko. So years later, when I picked up a reprint of when I picked up Marvel Tales 137 that reprints Amazing Fantasy 15, I said to myself, "That's the Blue Beetle artist." And I'm probably the only person in the world that thinks of Steve Ditko as the Blue Beetle artist. I still refer to him as that, and it drives people crazy. I have a few other things. We're getting a little low on time, but there were just a couple of things that I had to mention. Yeah, those 3-packs were fun. Dark Comics and Michael both remember those like I do. That mystery book, the book in the middle, was so much fun. Though admittedly, it was usually like, Spider-Woman? Who's Spider-Woman? Okay, so this is the cover of Avengers number 92. For people in the know, that's the first issue of the Kree-Skrull War, but that's not what makes this influential to me. This is the first comic I ever bought in a comic shop. This is the book I bought at Comics Castle in Fullerton.
Nice.
My dad took me there on my birthday. I didn't even know there was such a thing as comic book stores. Somehow he had kept that a secret until my birthday, and he took me there. And it just absolutely blew my mind that there was a store like this one. I just couldn't grasp in my little brain that there was a store that only sold comics.
Man, I wish I could have been like a fly on the wall to see your face when you walked in.
I stood in the door. I tell this story all the time. I stood in the doorway because I didn't know what to do. I just stood there. I did for the longest time. I swear to God. And the guy said to me, the guy at the counter was like, can I help you? And I told him, I said, I don't know what to do. And he said, well, what do you like? And I said, I like the Avengers. So he took me to the Avengers section, and I bought the oldest one I could afford. This was all the money that was in all my birthday cards. and I bought Avengers
much
number
was that?
92. I don't know, it was probably $15. And probably even that much. This was 1985, so Avengers number 92 in 1985. I don't even remember. I'm sure I bought other books too, but
Awesome.
but I bought Avengers 92.
I love that.
The first back issue I ever bought. The first old comic I ever bought. At the time, I want to say they were probably almost to 200. I think I was reading Avengers 180 or something at the time. And then so number 92 seemed like a long time ago. So anyway, I just wanted to show the first book I ever bought in a comic book store.
That's cool.
Because now I'm in a comic book store, and that day is a big reason
Now
why.
he drives the
Now
bus.
I drive the bus. So there you
do
go.
Simpson references all
Doesn't
day
get more influential than the first comic you bought in a comic store.
long. That's right.
I found the local comic book store after that. Everywhere I ever lived, everywhere I ever went, I still find the
Still
local
does.
comic store everywhere I go.
He's got this weird sensor. We could be in a foreign country. We could be in another state. And he's like, wait a minute. Shh. There's a comic book store around here. And dude, 10 out of 10 times, he's right. We'll turn a corner and boom, there's a comic. We're in Ireland.
Mm-hmm.
And he's like, wait a minute. I can feel the force. There's a comic store around the corner. Sure enough, we go down the street. We've never been to Ireland before. Turn a corner, and there's a freaking comic store. How do you do that?
I told him about the convention we came upon in Italy, or I mean in England.
England, yeah.
We're just like walking around being tourists and comic convention.
He's got a knack.
My favorite was I did that in LA one time. I don't even remember what we were doing there, but I just it hit me. Woo, my spidey sense tingled,
The weirdest
and I said, "Turn left. There's a comic book store up here."
of all the weird superhero
Of all the powers to have, I can sense a comic book store. And then, like I say, my favorite, because I was told we were totally lost. I don't even remember what we were doing in LA. I don't go to LA, but we were there for something, and we were in a rental car, and I was like, wait, turn left. There's a comic book store. And we did, and there was a store there, and that was like, I was like, wow, I really do have a power.
You do. It's weird.
So yeah, that's a lot of fun. I'm in the right line of work. What can I say?
That's right.
So last call. Well, we got a few minutes, but Q&A while I begin the wrap up.
I'll make another little plug for some of the stuff that I'd love to read. I don't know that they necessarily changed me, but the comics that inspire me to write, comics that inspire me as a writer.
That's a good one.
They're like, oh, this is so good. I've got a story idea that's an offshoot of this. Like what happens when, the scene changes. Oh, I can take up. It gets my creative juices going. So anything Jeff Lemire, we still haven't figured that out.
Mm-hmm.
Animal Man, when that came out, New 52, and that was a merge with the Swamp Thing story with the red versus the green. Oh, so good. Well written, beautiful art, very multi-layered as far as the meaning of the earth and horror and the environment and what we're doing to the earth. It's just, I could go on and on. But it was really, really well done. Love that book.
Love things that inspire those juices. I'll piggyback on that with art. I can't draw. I have no artistic skill. But unfortunately, it took me several years as a kid to learn that because I loved drawing Daredevil. I picked up, speaking of influential comics, how's that for a segue? I picked up Daredevil 183 because you see the little bits of Daredevil's back being blown out. I had never seen a cover like this. I'd never read a comic like this. I could go on and on about this as I had planned to. And I wasn't, I had quit. But then you mentioned drawing comics. So I read this, and it was awesome. It was so serious and gritty, and the Punisher, and he's tracking down a 12-year-old heroin dealer, and he's going to shoot him. And,
what?
And Punisher hunts kids. On and on and on. I could go about this book. But to what we're talking about, I started drawing. Daredevil. Because I like drawing Daredevil, and he had a cool mask and whatever, and I like to draw Daredevil. Well, a few years later, this was 183. when this guy came out, number 227, another hugely influential and awesome book for another bunch of reasons, but sadly to finish the story, this was where I realized that after many years of drawing Daredevil, they looked exactly the same as when I'd started. I was probably, I don't know, 13, 14, and I'm drawing Daredevil, and then the bell rang, and I went back through my stuff and found some of my older Daredevil drawings from like 5 years ago. And when you're like 14, 5 years is an eternity. And so, and then when I looked at the old pictures and my newest picture, and they were pretty much the same, I thought, well, maybe you're a writer.
I love those little drawings that Alex Ross is posting on his website. So, you know, the Justice League that he was drawing at age 5 and the Justice League that he's drawing now, it's just, you can see his progression. He improved over the years.
And that's exactly the opposite of my story, in that when you look at his little 5-year-old, like, here's me drawing Superman when I was 5, that you see immediately that kid has talent.
Totally.
That little 5-year-old crayon drawing has proportion and expression and color matching and the whole bit.
Good job.
And so, like I say, fortunately for Alex, I would like to think somebody told him as a kid, hey, you're pretty good. You should work on that.
Keep going.
As opposed to, you know, somebody told me, maybe you should get a job at McDonald's. So, but no, that is a big part of comics. That is a big part of the inspiration to be creative, to write that story you want to write, to draw those pictures you want to draw, or, you know, other things, to become a comic book store guy, to whatever it is, or gal. Well, I'm not a gal, or gal. And so, like I say, things should be inspiring. I'm big on inspiration, and superheroics should certainly be inspiring.
Or horror.
Horror sort of inspires me to never do that. And I don't know if that's like the same thing. Never run back in the house. Dude. Why did you run back in the house? Dude. Just
when
as
a
an
little
example.
boy says, get out, get out.
Get out.
Get out.
Why answer the phone? Just run.
Just go.
Anyway.
Cool.
Yes, 1971, 72. Great time for comics. For me, that year is 78 has at least on the Marvel side, some of the best books ever. So that about winds us down. I like to keep this to an hour. Hope we have infotained you as we've been trying to do for the last few weeks. Thank you for joining us. As we said, you can find us every day, black-cat-comics.com. Click on shop and shop to your heart's content. Set yourself up a curbside and come get them, or have them shipped right out to you, because comics are fun. Catch up with us every Wednesday morning for the new comic video, and we'll show you everything that's new that week. Check out the newsletter that we publish every week, where we have news and reviews and everything going on in the shop, everything going on in the world of comics. And then come back on Saturday afternoon, and we'll talk all about it. Because that's what we do. You pick up your books on Wednesday, you read them through the week, you tune in on Saturday, and we talk shop live. Because this is Comic Shop Talk Live. Want to thank everybody that has supported us through this time. Want to thank everybody that's been shopping at black-cat-comics.com. We wouldn't be here without you, and we want to stay here and keep bringing you the comics. So thank you all very much for your support. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next week.
Bye, guys. Thank you.